GA4, GTM, Looker, a tiny bit on BigQuery, and I really do mean a tiny bit. So we'll get started. There is a lot here. I have about 18 tips plus 2, plus I added some more stuff. So this is going to be rapid fire. I'm going to go through things a lot. There are certain things I'm going to explain in a little bit of detail, and certain things where I'm going to just gloss over them and tell you, like, just do this because I'm saying it, and you're going to have to trust me. All of this deck is available here. So you don't need to take screenshots of anything. You can scan the QR code, you can go to the bit.ly link, you'll have this entire presentation. In the presentation, I've added links everywhere, so you can always go back to the resource of, this guy said it, I don't trust him, but hey, there's links saying that, yeah, you should probably do that. So, there's that. I'm gonna spend 30 seconds on me, just in terms of why I'm here. This is what I used to look like about 10 years ago. I was better looking, younger, and had less weight on me. 3 children do that to you. In terms of my background, so I've spent the last 16 years in analytics in one way, shape, or form. I used to be on the agency side, I used to be on the client side, I now do my own consultancy, so my company name is No BS Digital. The kind of things that we do are implementations, and audits, and reporting, and dashboards, server-side tagging. That is the extent of the sales pitch, no more. So moving on to the actual presentation, I'm going to focus first on Google Tag Manager because I think that's where most of the efficiencies can be saved. And this whole presentation is about, in my mind, being a lazy analyst. A lazy analyst is a good analyst because you should never try to find a difficult approach to do. You should find the easiest way to do things and then move on, right? If you work for an agency, you have many other clients that you need to do this on. So you want to make sure you're rapid fire. This is going to be the most annoying tip of the whole thing. It's tiny, this is a measurement plan. So it's going to be annoying because a lot of times the client is not going to want to pay for this, right? Like, I don't want a measurement plan, I don't want an audit, just go and do this thing. The reason you want to do a measurement plan is because it's going to save you in the future. So a measurement plan, as you're implementing, whatever you're doing, it's going to keep you on track, and you're going to know that, hey, yeah, right, I need to do that. But the most important is actually after. When you're doing QA work, add screenshots and say, this works at this date and time. Because in 6 months, somebody can come and say, this thing stopped working, you messed everything up, why aren't I receiving data? But you can then say, well, actually, Mr. Client, I have screenshots right in this measurement plan which say that on day 1, when I launched this, it did work. So that means somebody at some point broke something, right? So it could have been the developers just removed GTM entirely, something like that.
In my experience, we tend to sell clients an audit session. Once a month, we do an audit.
Yep.
Right? And they pay for it. So all we do is once a month, we have one of our junior analysts go through the measurement plan, make sure everything's working. If something's not working, we complain to the client who messed things up.
And it's a simple value add,
Yes.
right? Because you want to tell them, do you want clean data? Sure you do. So then, pay a couple of $100 a month and we'll do this for you.
Yeah.
So, and then you have this for all of time, right? So you can make sure everything works. Make a workspace, please. I don't know how many people I need to yell at, but when you're going into GTM, create a new workspace, call it something decent. Don't just say Vadim something. Don't call it test 1, 2, 3. That is never going to help anybody in the future. Say what it actually is. So if you're implementing Facebook Cappy, say that. If you're doing something else, say that as well. Because when you publish this, in the future you look at versions and you will see that. So future you is also going to thank you because you're like, I remember that thing I did 6 months ago. You can always reference to that. So please create a workspace. Make sure it actually makes sense. Before you publish, you want to make sure you're debugging things. So preview mode is the most basic way you can do that, right? So you went into GTM, you made a workspace, you've added some tags. You're not just publishing to production because did you actually do the work to test it? Who knows? So use the preview mode, make sure you're receiving the parameters you're actually looking for. That's the most basic thing. And I can tell you, when I was starting, I didn't know about preview mode. I just hit submit, and I'm like, oh, look at the production site. Okay, I need to change something. And there were 30 different versions of me publishing things to production before I was happy. That does not look good, right? And I can say that because I've been doing this for 16 years. But at the beginning, that's what I used to do. So this preview mode, please use it. There are a lot of QA tools for analytics. One of my favorites is called Data Slayer. Data Slayer is sort of nowadays geared for me for GA4. It's the only thing I use it for. The reason it's so good is because you can see what is happening in the data layer itself, and then you can see where is that data going. So in this screenshot over here, so this is the data layer itself, that just what's available to you, doesn't mean that it's actually going anywhere. And then you have the right hand side, which is actually, this is going into GA4 property, and these are all the different parameters that is collected on this page view. So this is a really fast and clean way to see it, because I see other analysts trying to go into console and trying to dig stuff out of the console. I'm like, you can absolutely do that. This is what, it does that too, right? It just cleans it up for you, so it's a lot easier to see. So Data Slayer is a fantastic tool. It makes things really easy. I do have to warn you, it can be buggy sometimes, right? So sometimes nothing loads and you have to turn it on and off and refresh, and that does happen. But it's a tool, it's a free tool. What can you do? This is another tool I use, it's called Omnibug. Omnibug is, this thing can do 64 different platforms. So with Data Slayer, mostly I use it for debugging GA4. This thing, you can use it for Facebook, Pinterest, TikTok, you know, this site has GA4, the old Universal Analytics, it can do Hotjar, Clarity, so it can do tons of other platforms. I usually use everything in conjunction. So I don't say just use this, just use that. I use all of the above because they all work slightly different. So if you've set up consent mode, for example, you're gonna wanna use the preview mode in actual GTM. It's, you know, Data Slayer and this is not gonna be tremendously helpful for you. So, but again, I'm focusing a lot on QA because the title of this is you wanna save time and make sure your data is clean. And if you're not doing a good job of doing, come on in, you're welcome. Don't be shy.
Wrong session.
$10, say. So this is another thing that will save you a lot of time. This was fairly recently released, at least I just discovered it recently. This is the event settings variable for GA4. What this means is that, I'm gonna use the example of this specific client. They are a multinational organization, they have multiple brands, they just launched a tool. That tool is gonna be across in multiple environments, it's gonna do many different brands. So how do you standardize that in an easy way across multiple tags? You use this variable. So what that means is, instead of me having to capture data of what is the environment, what is the brand, what is the language, what is the step, in each individual tag in GA4, you can bring in this variable and it will automatically take all that information and display it as part of all other tags. So, oh, this is totally different. I'm sorry, I changed it. You're like, what the hell is he talking about? This is something else entirely. Remember what I said? We'll use it for another slide. This is gonna be a quick one. When you're in GA4, when you're in GTM, make sure to separate the page view tag from the config tag, all right? The lazy analyst, or the one who doesn't know, is just gonna throw it all in together, and by default, you're not even gonna see this send page default true or false. It doesn't show that to you, because when you bring it in, it's automatically gonna say true. And then your config tag is gonna be responsible for sending the page view and doing a whole bunch of setup work in the background. You don't want it to do that. You wanna separate it, because they're gonna have to fire at different times. The page view tag, you may want it to collect different things, like the subtopic and the author and all sorts of other things for the page view tag. Yes?
Can you address a bit deeper on what are the bunch of other things the configuration tag was set up beside page view?
Second?
You just mentioned the configuration GA4 configuration tag did a bunch of things on the background outside of setting a page view. Can you just
Yeah. So it's going to load a bunch of libraries which other tools are going to use. If you're going to start working on consent mode, you're going to need that config tag to be separate from page view, because you want certain things to be initialized at the right time. And if everything is just joined together, you don't have that control. And again, I don't think I have the time to go through technical details, but I'm happy to answer your question in more detail right after. This is a super easy one. Make sure, so we want to save ourselves time. If you're going to be creating an account in an event in GTM, you already know the name of that event. Why not just go to GA4 and create it? So you don't need to wait to publish your stuff for it then to appear in GA4 in a couple of days, because it's not real time. And then you hit the slider to make it a key event. You don't need to wait for that. You can simply, you know your event name, you go into GA4, you set it up as a key conversion, and it's gonna start from the very beginning. So before you even publish, you can already have goals, conversions, whatever they call them nowadays. This one, so the example I'm going to use is you are a B2B company. You have a bunch of lead forms on your site. You are collecting lots of interesting information. You're going to have a data layer that is going to be, it's going to house all this information. So first name, last name, email, company name, country, blah, 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 right? People are a funny bunch. We are anything if not consistent. So this is a dumb example. I know that. But this example speaks to sort of, people can write their company name in a bunch of different ways, right? They can come capital Facebook, lowercase Facebook, uppercase, and everything in between. So if you're going to be creating data layer variables to capture that information, and you will be doing that, just take this little box. This is change case to lowercase. And if you do that, now all the data you're collecting is going to be forced lowercase. So it doesn't matter what Joe did and they did this way and Bob did that, it's not going to matter. You're going to be standardizing your data, and it takes 30 seconds, right? Just force everything lowercase.
I guess you can do that with URL variables just as easily.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yep.
This is for any variable in GTM, you can force it to a lowercase. So a good example is UTMs. So I've dealt a lot with this when you do UTM audits, where people, again, like source medium, right? They will array different versions of Facebook, but all UTMs, all variables in GTM, you can lowercase. This is the thing I was talking about before. Remember that 30 seconds ago? So, like I said, so let's say you have a bunch of tags, right? And they all do slightly different things that fire at different times, but you're collecting things like, you know, they started this flow, and they clicked on this button, and then they finished the flow, and there's a survey, and there's a newsletter opt-in. And throughout that entire flow, there's a data layer that's sitting there, and you're trying to collect all the standard things for this journey, right? So the country they're in, the environment they're in, the language they're in. You don't need to add that as a parameter to every single one of these tags. You can just have one event variable, this thing, which will have all the information, and it will automatically inject that information into any tag you want. So it's the fastest, the cleanest way to standardize all of these different things. Because otherwise, and again, I did this like 6 months ago, I have 20 tags, and I'm manually copy pasting to make sure that each one of these tags has all these parameters that are standard. Because once this data hits GA4, I'm gonna have a looker dashboard, and I'm gonna use, you know, these various same fields to filter. And if it's not standardized, or if it's missing, that's not great. This one is slightly more advanced. I recently had a client asking me for, we have a tool, and it's gonna be across different markets, and we want you to send data to 2 different places. So we want you to send data to this GA4 property and to that GA4 property. So not different sub-properties under the same account, but 2 entirely different GA4 properties. So I actually found and spoke to the creator of this thing. It's called Improve GA4. It is a tag template that you can get on GitHub. And what it does, it has 2 types of tags, and one of them acts sort of like as the config, and the config basically says, where is this data gonna go? And then you have the events, which are exactly what you're thinking. They're just basic events. So you have one event, which is say, you know, click here, and then the config tag that's the thing that's responsible for actually sending it to 2 different places. So the old way of doing it is you have to replicate all of this, right? So you have one GA4 property, one config tag, and everything is going to reference that config tag and that page view. And then if you wanted to send data to different places, you have to do the same thing twice. So now what that means is you have lots of different tags doing different things, and maintenance in the future is going to be a pain in the butt. So this tool will be able to, all you need to do is just add another config tag. So one config tag goes over here, one config tag goes over there, you can add a 3rd, a 4th, a 5th. It really doesn't matter, it's super easy. So if you need to do that, it's a lot easier than you're thinking.
So you just it adds a second config tag for
Yeah.
you. That's the idea, and then there's no problem with having 2 config tags.
No problem. You can have 3, you can have 4, you can have 5. So for me, I needed 2,
Okay.
but you can add more. So each config tag is going to be its own property.
Okay.
And then all of these tags, they just reference the config. So
Each
they,
of them.
Yeah,
Yeah, I see.
it's really cool. Like I said at the beginning, a good analyst is a lazy one. Do not try to reinvent the wheel. If you have something that's relatively generic that you're trying to track on your site, so file download, outbound link click, internal link click, scroll, you don't need to go in and make a new tag just for this thing. There's recipes out there. So, you know, I've been using the site for a lot of years. He's recently upgraded all his recipes to GA4, but you can basically download a JSON container, import it into GTM, change a couple of things. So usually just the measurement ID that you have, and then preview and publish. So now you don't need to, if you're trying to think of, I want to create a file download tag, I need to think of the regular expression of which extensions do I want to capture, PDF, doc, Excel, Don't worry, there's lots of tags, there are lots of templates that already exist to help you with some of that work. Moving on to GA, data retention. This is an annoying one. I'm not your legal counsel. Talk to your legal counsel before you make any settings changes related to this. But by default, it may be 2 months. Just go in and double check that you're at 14 months. Because what's gonna happen is, we're in October right now, you're gonna wanna look at your data in January, but you only have 2 months of data, and it's a rolling 2 months. So always make sure that you're set at 14 months. The alternative is, you're smart, you've connected everything to BigQuery, and BigQuery is dumping your data on a daily basis, and you will have your data for all time. So that's obviously the much better alternative, but that has technical and cost implications. Not everyone's gonna know how to do that, so just as a bare minimum, check that it's 14 months. The reporting section in GA4, so this thing on the sides, this guy, that is fully customizable. That was not possible with Universal Analytics. It was sort of, this is what we want you to do, that's it. Now it's fully customizable. So you have this library option where you can go in, you can make copies of any of these reports, and you can pre-filter them. So for example, if a client only wants to see the user acquisition or the traffic acquisition report for organic search and nothing else, you can go in, make a copy of it, add filters to it, and it's only gonna show you, default channel grouping equals organic search. And all of these things are gonna be customizable. So I've done it in the past where a client has a very active staging environment, and I was actually polluting their production data. So you can go into the library and just filter things by host name and say, only show me the production data, don't show me anything else. It's obviously a lot better to do that from GTM, but when you're going in and cleaning things up, you don't always have that luxury. So if you're obviously setting up things up from scratch, it's usually better to send data to different places. One's production, one's staging. But if you don't have that luxury, then just do that.
Earlier we used to use, in the earlier version of GA, we used to use views.
Yes.
One view was for
Yes.
prod, one view was for public staging.
And we still have that, right? So if
Yeah.
you're on the GA360 suite, if you got the bucks, you can create sub-properties. So a sub-property will be kind of like the view.
But here we use filters, yeah.
Yeah, but so with GA4, that option is sort of done, right? You don't really have that option anymore, which is annoying. They took a bunch of things away which we took for granted, and then moved them to the premium tier. But now they're saying, if you dump your data into BigQuery, it'll all be there, and you can do all the filtering you want. But that's a big barrier for people to go from GA4 as a marketer to BigQuery and SQL and those sort of things. This is a very simple tip. You can always add a secondary dimension to all of the reports that are in GA4. There's a little plus sign, it's gonna be over here, and you can just start typing and it'll show you the different dimensions that are available to you. So that's a sort of, if you don't wanna go to the trouble of creating a custom report, you can hit the little button, it's gonna be like right over here, and you can bring in a secondary dimension. If you're in GA4, and you're done your implementation, please don't forget to do this, right? So you wanna connect to Google Ads, to BigQuery, and to Search Console. You may not have Google Ads, but if you do, or your client does, that's a connection that should be made on day one. The same thing for Search Console. If it doesn't exist and no one knows what Search Console is, which I've been in organizations like that, just make it by yourself. Just set up Search Console, link it together, and then at some point in the future, you, client, future you, will thank you. And then BigQuery, this is a little bit trickier, but I still encourage you to do this. There's not gonna be a huge cost to turn it on and start dumping data. The cost is gonna be when you're starting to actively use BigQuery. So as you're starting to make reports and do sort of things, that's when the cost will come, but not just from dumping data in there. Google has a very generous tier of, just dump terabytes of crap in here and we'll be fine, and we'll charge you when you start using it. Some other stuff. Looker. So Looker is wonderful, just like all the other platforms. It has templates. So again, don't go in Looker, press start from scratch, because you're gonna be struggling of like, I need to move this over here, I don't know what this does. There are templates, there's tons of templates. There's free templates that they provide themselves. There are companies like DataBlue, I really like them, I've bought a bunch of their products. They offer paid templates. So you pay them $100, $200, they'll give you a link. And they have some incredible dashboards where they will connect, GA4, Google Ads, Search Console, all in one place. And because it's part of the Google stack, it's all free, right? You don't need to pay for paid connectors, which I'll get to in a second. But also there's everything in between. So you don't have to use free templates here. There's a lot more sites. There's a lot of people that are selling these templates. There's lots of free templates. I'll be honest with you, I don't use them. I found them to be kind of crappy, and a lot of them just don't look good. They don't look professional. It looks like something I would do. Like, I'm not a designer, so that's why I pay for things to look pretty, because I can't get there.
Just a quick question, the Data Blue stuff, is that one-time fee and now you have the editable dashboard, so you kind of take it over and customize
You
it
can
from there?
reuse it for other clients if you so choose.
Okay,
Right?
got it.
You can change fonts, you can change colors. They provide instructions in terms of, because oftentimes they will have very customized things in there, and you may have to change some formulas, may have to change some fields, but their instructions are very good. Again, I have no affiliation with Data Blue. You can buy whatever tools you want. I really like them.
Supermetrics tends to link it specifically to one account. Supermetrics, yes.
Yeah. So what I was saying a second ago, you can also bring in data from pretty much anywhere into Looker, right? So if you have Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter, no one uses that anymore, but whatever platform you may be using, you can all bring that in through Looker. I use Power My Analytics. I've used them in the past. I've used Supermetrics as well. I use 2-minute reports. So the most affordable one that actually has the most connections, I would say, is 2-minute reports. Power My Analytics is a bit more enterprise. It's still not crazy expensive, but they do have the functionality where they can actually take your data and dump it into their own data warehouse. So then Looker can get it a little bit faster. Because if you use Looker, you know that if it has a lot of data, it can get laggy and slow. So Power My Analytics will dump stuff into their own warehouse, if you so choose. BigQuery, this is a relatively new change. When you go into BigQuery and you want to explore your data, and let's say you're not super technical and you just want to know, I made a connection, I hope data is flowing there. You don't need to hope, right? You don't. That's not what we do here. So when you go into BigQuery, there's this export button, and you can now actually export with Looker Studio. So it'll automatically spin up Looker Studio. It'll bring in all the fields that you have in BigQuery, and now you can actually bring in, event name, event count. You're like, cool, this is actually receiving the data that I'm looking for. I'm not saying this is a replacement for actually building things in Looker and building tables and having SQL queries, but if you just want to do the due diligence, I'm done? 5 minutes? Awesome. So if you want to do the due diligence of, I connected it, I want to make sure it's getting the right data, do that.
One really quick question on that.
Sure.
When you pull down the data, does it look the same as if you plug into a GA4 API
Yes,
kind of
it
thing?
should be, yeah.
So it's the same data, it normalizes it in some way?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it does like the unnesting for you. You don't need to do any of that kind of
Okay.
crazy stuff. It just works.
Okay.
Which is really nice. If you have questions, Measure Chat. I'm hopefully all of you guys are already in Measure Chat, but if you're not, join. This is the biggest analytics community on Slack. There's, I think, like 20,000 people all over the world. I use it very frequently because I have a lot of questions and things don't work, and I encourage everyone here to do that as well. Measure Slack, cool. This one is completely random, but I really like it. As a freelancer that started my business, 6.5 years ago, use AppSumo if you want to get a bunch of tools for a lifetime. So if you need a tool that does screenshots, for video recording, AI, all that kind of stuff. You pay a one-time fee, so I don't like the SaaS model. Like, I don't want to pay $50 a month for this product that may or may not use. You pay for any one of these tools once, and you have it for a lifetime. So AppSumo is fantastic. I use a bunch of their tools. My meeting calendar thingamajig is through them. This is sort of my bonus tip number 1. This was about 2 years ago. I did my first project where I had to implement analytics into an app. And if anyone's done that in here, the debugging for that is just painful. It is, if you don't want to download like the Android SDK to your computer, if you don't want to go through emulation, if you don't want to do all of that, this tool is amazing. It is free. It takes about a 5-minute setup where you just make, you change your ports on your, you connect to a Wi-Fi, change some ports, and you can actually click and you will see all of the events that are firing in Firebase in here. It is amazing. And I was so happy I actually paid the guy a bunch of money because I'm like, I know it's free, but this has saved me so much time. Thank you. Light shots. So I was talking about in the very first slide, so bringing it back, in the very first slide I was talking, when you're making a measurement plan, include screenshots. I do not mean screenshots as in throw it in a Word document, save it to your local device. That's a horrible idea. You want to make sure everything is digital, so use a tool like LightShot, a screenshot. There's a bazillion of these different things. But what you want to do is make sure that it gives you a link. So that link you can take and shove into your measurement plan, because at some point in the future, that will be there. In 3 years, maybe you already changed computers. So whatever you saved locally, it's not there anymore. But this thing will stick around. So screenshot tools are super, super important. Thank you, and again, this whole deck is over here. So if you took some notes, thank you. You can scan that, you can go to that website, that's where this presentation is. There are links in the presentation about to each one of these sources. If you have any questions, I'm going to stick around here. Thank you. Any questions? All right. Thank you.
Does that app debugger work for
Adobe?
just GA, or does it work for Adobe?
I have not tried it for Adobe, and I'm pretty sure it's just Firebase.
Oh,
But it's worth a shot.
give it a try.